Okay.
Just you and me?
So far. Okay. Okay. So we'll give it a second and we'll make sure everyone's got the right link, and I'll check the email and we'll start here soon. I'm going to get my information right. I'm going to go make sure I have the right paper. Let's see. Make sure anyone else is coming in. Okay. Give it another second. I'm also going to try to link this inside the group. So just be patient. Anybody else? No, not yet. Okay. Meeting is now streaming live on Facebook as well, just in case someone's over there hanging out. And live now in Springfield Strength Club. Okay. And good. Let me check the emails real quick, just in case someone has the wrong link. I know there's a couple people who said they would be here who aren't here yet. I don't see anything from them. Okay. And it's recording. 7:06. Let me pin my face. Ta-da. All right. Here we go. let's chit chat about what is and what is not, and what it takes for fat loss or weight loss. I'm going to share my screen a couple times where it'll give us some visuals, and we'll go back and forth. So at any point you need to see a slide or see an image, just let me know and I can pull it back up, or if I can go back to something. Let's start off with the concept of what weight loss and fat loss is. So in order for the body to want to lose weight or lose fat, which are slightly different, is there has to be a manipulation to the energy in and energy out balance. So no matter what type of system you're using, ultimately the reason why it's happening is because there's an upset in that balance. So whatever type of diet it is, whatever name of diet it is, the reason it works is because you're creating a calorie deficit. So one system does not work better than another system. One isn't superior in effectiveness. All that it really means is that certain styles of dieting is usually easier for some people to adhere to. So some people will have greater success with one style of eating compared to a different style of eating, not because that works better, but because it works better for them and where they are. So some people, fasting works great, or keto works great, or Whole30 works great, or the list goes on and on and on. Low carb or high carb, or low fat and high fat, or macro counting or not counting. It doesn't matter, right? They all work equally effective when it comes to losing weight or losing fat. So we'll start there, right? So if we know that the energy in, energy out is the why behind it, let's talk about how do we manipulate the energy in, energy out, and some common faults with other styles of dieting. So for one, if we're looking at something as the solution, if we're looking at a style of dieting as the solution for fat loss, and we're looking at it in a time span that's short, whenever that time span or that label of diet is over, we're done. We're over with. And so that can lead to a lot of in and out of yo-yo dieting. We see it's very, very common to be very hard into something for 2 to 3 weeks, and then we back off. And 2 to 3 weeks, and we back off. And that's normal because that's about the normal just attention span we have as humans. We just get to a certain point where we get bored. And that doesn't mean that people have more or less motivation or discipline. It just means that that thing that they were doing, what was set up for, just they got to the end of the road where they were like, I need to move on to something else. Okay. The common fault that I see with people making adjustments to weight loss or fat loss is that they just do things at random, or they do a labeled something for 4 weeks at a time. And they really haven't stopped to look at what's happening right now, right? And so in order for us to know where to go, we have to know where we're at in sort of an assessment type of situation. So I am going to share the first screen. Hopefully, if I do this right. Okay. I am going to, where is it? Share screen, it's right in the bottom of the page. Give me a second. A little bit of issue with technology.
We love the technologies.
Oh my goodness, it is ridiculous. Okay, good. Now let's see if we can do that again.
I wonder if it would let me do it on my end. Maybe.
Maybe. Oh, there it is. There we go. Zoom has updated, so it makes you go back through things again. Okay, now can you guys see my screen? You can see like a Zoom, round cube, what everything is over there. All right.
Whoa.
Whoa. All right. Okay. Here we go. This is the first screen we want to look at. So we can see this, right? Thumbs up for everybody. We can see that?
Yes. Yes.
Step 1, establish maintenance and principles. So when we establish maintenance and principles, we all think, well, whatever I'm doing right now is what is not working, right? So are you at maintenance? So are your ins and outs at a maintenance that's keeping things constant? So we need to make sure that we're consistent in establishing maintenance to know what to adjust. And what the adjustment is, that adjustment may be in food, it may be in movement, maybe in stress, maybe in sleep. It can mean a lot of different things. But step 1 is to establish maintenance and to establish principles. So if I want to look at the next 2 weeks in order to establish my maintenance and principles, are you consistently eating the same nutrition for 14 days? What that means is, it's not, are you eating good or bad for 14 days? It's, am I consuming pretty much the same things day in, day out? Are my Monday to Friday the same? Is my eating out very consistent? Or do I see a lot of inconsistency over 14 days? Now, you can do this with tracking. You can do it with a calorie counting type app, but you're not counting calories. What you're doing is you're looking at, what am I consuming, and is it pretty much the same thing over and over again for 14 days? It could even be done on a piece of paper and a notepad, or a notepad on your phone. It doesn't have to be actual counting calories. Why that's so important is because if you are inconsistent, good or bad, which we'll get to later on, there's nothing, you don't know what to change. So if you change one thing, you don't know if that one thing is actually going to make a difference, because you don't really know what that maintenance is, right? When you're establishing maintenance and principles, you also want to look at, what is my daily, weekly movement? So am I in the gym 3 days a week? Am I walking every day? Am I sitting at a desk 6 days a week? Am I playing sports, or am I doing whatever it is? Does my job require me to do physical things, or does it not require me to do physical things? And that's really important, because when you're looking at the energy in, energy out equation, the output, we got to know where we're at with our output and whether or not we need to make an adjustment to the output or not. Okay. So what is our daily movement? And that you want to look at that every day. Okay. So over 14 days, every day, what's my movement look like? Okay. How is sleep, stress, and water? Do you find yourself sleeping 4 hours a night all the time? Do you find yourself eating or sleeping 8 hours every other day, or whatever it may be? Again, this isn't a time to make adjustments or judge what we're doing. This is the time to go, okay, let's just look at what I'm doing now. And even though you may think, well, I know what is actually happening, I know I'm not sleeping, this is really important to literally write it down. Use technology, use your phone, use whatever it is you need to use, and say, I went to bed at 10:30, got up at 6 a.m., had 6 hours of sleep. Okay, the next day, went to bed at midnight, got up at 4 a.m., had 4 hours of sleep. Tracking all of that and looking at it. Okay, same thing with water intake, stress intake. Are certain parts of your week really stressful? Is stress unmanaged 14 days in a row? Or are there certain areas that are spiking stress throughout your week? Now, the last thing you want to start doing is you want to start noting your daily weight. This is not, again, this is not looking at, is it going up or down? This is just going, okay, when I wake up in the morning after using the restroom, I weigh this much. and I'm going to write down that note and not attach any emotion to it for 14 days in a row. What you're doing when you look at the 2 weeks is you're setting up your energy balance. So what you're doing is you're setting up and looking at, okay, this is everything I'm putting in. This is everything that's going out. This is where my stress, water, sleep hormones are kind of at. And I'm going to look, does my average for the first 7 days match my second 7 days? Am I 135.2 over 7 days, week 1? Am I 135.2 on week 2? Then I know my input and output are creating a maintenance weight. And I can look at the entire picture and go, okay, this is why and what's happening to create that balance. If the number has changed from week 1 to week 2, up or down, now we're learning what changed from the first 7 days to the second 7 days that is going to upset the balance, good, bad, or no change at all. And if you see a change from week to week, you can go, what did I do differently those 7 days than these 7 days that changed that balance, that made the average scale weight change, not the daily scale weight, because it can become very confusing when you're looking at daily scale weights. All right? Step out of the sun. Now, do we have any questions over this very first page? That kind of makes sense? Fairly clear? All right. Okay, that's something else. Now, let's look at energy balance. Energy balance. Calories in, calories out, factors that influence energy and output. The reason that counting calories and using labeled diets can become very frustrating is because you don't really know where you are in the equation. You're just using something and it may or may not be working, but you don't understand why it's working. So factors that influence energy intake, how you feel, how hungry you are, what kind of environment you're in. Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it stressful? Are you sitting here doing nothing? Or are you around a lot of social situations, right? How you feel about the food, right? That's another thing that can factor the energy intake. Are you rewarding exercise with food? That can be factors in energy intake. The other part about factors that influence energy intake is that when you look at everything that you're consuming, you have to look at the variability that's already going to be inherent in intake, consumption, and tracking, right? Whether or not something is 3 ounces or 4 ounces is really hard to tell. Whether or not whatever something is prepared at a restaurant is almost impossible to know what it is, even if you put it inside an app. So you could be off by 10 to 15% in what you think is energy in just from errors in the system. And there's nothing wrong or right about those systems, but they are inherently off by 10 to 15%. Anything that you can track with consumption, including your mind, including technology, is going to have some sort of error. Factors that output, okay? Your daily metabolic rate, which can be factored in by how much muscle mass you have, by genetics, by sleep, by how much movement you're doing. Exercise activity, are you working out 2 days, 3 days, 6 days a week? Non-exercise activity, am I sitting most of the day? Am I walking most of the day? Thermal effective food is like, if I go from having a super high protein diet to a super high fat diet, how your body metabolizes those types of foods will change. And that's an output thing, okay? So energy in, energy out. There's so much air. And even if you think of like a movement tracker, step counter, right? It can say, well, you know, if you use the MyZone belts at the gym, it can say you burned 400 calories in this session. That technology is off by 10 to 15%. The only way that it can be even somewhat accurate is if you're in a perfectly controlled clinical setting where they can measure everything, your body temperature, that you have a tube down your throat measuring how much oxygen you're putting out. They can measure how much heat you're putting out, how much sweat you're putting out. all those things have to be factored to really know how many calories you're burning. So if we know the energy out, energy in is a flawed calorie counting system, that's why you taking note of what your maintenance is by habits and by principles is more important. Because it doesn't matter if you think you're intaking 2,000 and you think you're outputting 2,000. If your weekly averages aren't changing, then we obviously know something's wrong. But we don't know what to change because we thought we were counting. We thought we were counting calories and it said 2,000. Well, it might be off. It might be more or less, but we don't know because we didn't align that with those weekly averages on the scale compared to what we intaked. All right? Okay. Questions with calories in, calories out, or the energy equation of output input. Good? Questions about that? Makes sense? All right. So now what do you do? So you take 2 weeks and you take notes of everything that's happening throughout the day, throughout the week. You have your 2 weekly averages. You're like, okay, I do this much and I intake this much, and here are my numbers. Now what do you do? This is where we talk about what adjustments need to be made. Step 2, movement, big rocks, 2 weeks. Now, what you want to do is this is when you want to start establishing a change in maintenance. So you want to start controlling the things we know we can control and start to move into things that I know will make us healthier. And we want to see what those long-term principles do to our energy equation. So if I'm not in, lifting weights or working out at home or whatever it may be for 3 days, and I'm not walking every day, if I just do that for 2 weeks and I don't change anything else, but I look at my weekly averages, do I have a change in the scale? Yes, no. So if you do, then you know that that movement has upset the energy balance. And then what do? You keep repeating it. You don't change it, right? But you need to do that for a minimum of 2 weeks, minimum, without making any big adjustments. So you want to think about, all right, for the next 2 weeks, which adjustments am I going to make that I know I can sustain daily or weekly for 2 weeks? And that's not saying that you need to do 7 days of working out, but that for the most part, establishing daily movement is one of the big rocks. And we think about rocks, you have big rocks, boulders, little rocks, sand. Well, the big rocks take up the most amount of space. They have the biggest impact. And that's what we want to think about is what are the big rocks that I know I can change? They're going to start making some adjustments. Little rocks would be like, I'm working out 7 days and I'm doing 45 minutes of movement. I'm going to change it to 50 minutes of movement. That's a little rock. Changing 5 minutes of movement. That's a little tiny thing that may make an adjustment, but really it's establishing movement daily that we want to establish first, right? So for 2 weeks, we're going to establish our movement. And that can even be for 7 days. I'm going to walk 20 minutes every day, and that's going to be the change in energy balance, right? When it comes to the other side of the equation, when you look at the principles of nutrition, right? Think about the basics. Am I eating 2 servings of vegetables? Am I using a hand portion control with protein? Am I eating 3 square meals a day? Am I consuming McDonald's every day at lunch? Am I drinking 3 sodas a day? The list can go on and on and on and on. But you want to look at what are the things I know I should be doing daily? Am I having a big salad every day? Am I drinking 100 ounces of water every day? And picking one of those things to make as a habit. Whatever thing you think is going to be you're going to have the most confidence doing. So if you rate yourself on a 1 to 10 scale and you say, you know what, I really need to work on 100 ounces of water every day. Okay, level 1 to 10, how confident are you that you could drink 100 ounces a day? If it's less than an 8, you need to find a different goal. Okay? It needs to be an 8, 9, or 10 and confidence in changing that thing. And you want to do that one thing for 2 weeks. So if it is, let's just say that it is getting 100 grams of protein a day. Let's just say that that's one of the things. Well, can I confidently get 100 grams of protein in every day for the next 14 days? Yes, no. Yes. How confident am I? I'm like a 6. I should pick something else. Or I should change that goal slightly. Right? Any questions on phase 2?
Well, it's kind of specific. Like, so can it be like, can you do some kettlebells instead of 4 days of walking when you're not in the gym instead of walking?
Yeah. It doesn't matter. I was just using I was just using this 3 + 4 as just one example of many things you could be doing.
Of moving.
But you also want to think about when you're doing this, you're establishing principles that when you get to step 3 are easily repeatable. So if you think, okay, if I have a goal of losing whatever it is, and I know that if I want to lose 14 pounds, it's going to take me 14 weeks. Can I commit to throwing around bells 3 days a week for 14 weeks? So you want to think about the things that you're adding in as something that I know I can sustain forever. And that may be having an option. That may be like, all right, I'm going to do 3 days in the studio. I'm going to do 2 days of walking. I'm going to do 2 days of swings and get-ups. That's my 7 days of movement. I feel pretty confident. Again, 1 to 10, how do I feel about that plan? If I'm an 8, 9, and 10, cool. Let's execute on it and let's lean into it and let's just keep it moving forward.
So no rest days.
Let's talk about what rest days mean, right? A rest day in the world of fitness is a rest day from fitness. When we're looking at health and movement, I'm talking about, are you moving through space 7 days a week? Would you consider a 20-minute walk a rest day or a movement day?
Probably movement.
It's a trick question. I was just kind of, right. So exactly. Yes, a rest day from lifting weights is important, but the body, when it comes to losing weight, movement is super critical, even if that's easy movement. Okay. There was a study where someone had 2 groups of people, and I think one day was 3 days a week of intense exercise in the gym, and the other group was 7 days a week of walking with the same calorie-controlled manipulation. And the group that was doing 7 days of walking had greater fat loss than the group that was doing the lifting, because it was about frequency of movement. So the intensity wasn't as important as how often you're moving your body through space. When you go back to your first 2 weeks, if you say, I am not doing any movement for 7 days a week, and you add in 20 minutes of movement a day for 7 days, that is a huge change in the equation. Okay. And that's why that's important.
Right.
Good there. Makes sense. Okay, cool. But you're right. It is a very per person thing. And that's what I really want to get across with this conversation, is the very per person thing. It is not a everyone needs to eat 100 grams of carbs thing. You need to do this because everyone does that, right? Let's move on to step 3. Step 3, stick to the plan. So this is the hardest part. So you're 4 weeks into a process. 2 weeks, you've established maintenance. The next 2 weeks, you've tracked your weight every day and you look at your weekly average. So now you have 4 weeks of averages to look at, to go, okay, let's look at week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. Was there a change? So if you look at week 3 and 4, was there a change down in any way? Did you go from 135.2 from week 2 to 135.0 on week 3 and 134.8 on week 4? Then you know there's a positive change in the right direction. Keep going forward. Don't change anything. Just keep doing what you're doing until you see a number stall, right? When you see a number stall, you've now known that your energy in, energy out is creating that maintenance. So if you have the same weight for 3 weeks in a row, your current equation is balanced. What do I need to do to upset the balance? Now, you may find that doing the 7 days of movement and the 2 servings of vegetables and your 100 grams of protein puts you into a point of calorie deficit that puts you going on in a weight loss for 12 weeks. But we don't know that unless we pay attention and track everything.
And can I use little like 0.2, 0.4 as weight loss? It doesn't have to be like.
Yeah. We're very normal to thinking, I lost 1 pound, I lost 2 pounds. Oh, I didn't lose 2 pounds. But you may have lost a third of a pound in that week 6 and not known it. And that could have been a positive change. And then the next week you could lose another half a pound. And at the end of the month, end of 2 months, end of 3 months, you're like, man, I'm down a solid 6 pounds and I've created habits and principles that I know I can establish and maintain. Right? If at any point I feel like the process is too slow, I go back to looking at my energy in, energy out, and start looking, what can I manipulate? So where am I in my consumption? Where am I in my output? And what can I change? What can I move, right? That I know I can answer the question with 8, 9, or 10 confidence that I can do for another 2 weeks at minimum. Okay? Right? Good. It's also very slow. So that's just the part about it. We're used to crazy challenges and we're used to these things for 2, 4, 6 weeks at a time. And we see these great numbers. Lost 7 pounds. So awesome. 2 weeks later, you're up 4 pounds. Well, you really didn't create an actual change to your process. You just created a change inside those 4 weeks. Now, at any point in time, let's just say that you've been doing this for 12 weeks and you've lost a little bit and a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. And you're like, man, I got this thing coming up and I want to have a greater impact on the numbers. Okay, well, what couple things can I do where I'm going to really push into, man, I can barely answer this question at a 7 or 8. Like it's going to be, can I, such a per person thing, can I carb cycle for the next 4 weeks? Can I have 0 carbs on off days and 200 grams of carbs on workout days? Can I do that for 4 weeks? And you're like, whew, man, that'd be like a 6. Like I'm kind of on the fence about it. I think I could do it. That's where coaching and accountability comes into play. When you have to bump yourself to that next level of accountability and discipline in the process, that's where we need a level of coaching, a level of accountability, or someone to say, I think you should change this for the next 2 to 4 weeks. And let's see how that works. How do you feel about that thing? Okay. The real goal with moving from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3 is to teach us to get into an 80-20 process to maintain 80-20. And then the 80-20, as long as that produces results, we maintain 80-20 as long as possible. And we don't deviate from 80-20. If at any point 80-20 isn't creating enough work, I need to bump to an 85 or 90-10 with the process, or 100% into the process. But 100% in the process is impossible to maintain. Right? Makes sense there. I think I have a slide. Ooh, let me see if I can find this. It's this is gonna be hard to find. It is somewhere.
What are you looking for?
I'm looking at the, well, for one, the 80-20. guys, I'm sorry, don't look too long because I'm sure your brains are exploding with what is all this nonsense. It's
Can I ask a question while you're looking?
yeah.
So for me, I'm so inconsistent
Uh-huh.
in everything in my life. So one of the things that I was thinking when you're talking about picking that one big thing was like I suck at logging my food. And I notice a difference when I do because it's right in front of my face and it's a hassle. So there's times where it's like, well, I'd probably snack, but I don't want to have to put it into my phone.
Mhm.
So is that too small of a first big rock to just log your food and that's your first
No.
big habit?
No, but you got to answer your, like, if logging your food, what is the process of logging food? And in that process, can you answer yourself level 1 to 10, I can log my food for 14 days in a row?
But isn't that necessary for step 1 though?
No, it's necessary in step 1 in looking at your food. It's not necessary that you physically have to put all your food into an app.
Okay.
But you really want to be is you want to be aware and cognitive, even if it's a notepad that's ate this, ate that, and you're done. It doesn't have to be super specific in the tracking, but you do definitely want to put yourself into a mindset of I'm going to pay attention and note however I need to note it for 2 weeks.
Do you know of one that's really
MyFitnessPal is the most common, but I also know students who literally take a pen and pad and write it down because that's easiest for them. It's a very per person thing.
okay?
MyFitnessPal is the most user friendly and it's the most common.
Thank you.
Okay, of course, yeah. It's way back here. Anyways, it was talking about I must have made it a real long time ago.
I thought you were just on the 80-20.
It was the how long to spend in each like zone of effort.
Oh.
Well, this is one of them. It'll work. Maybe. Okay, taking. Oh goodness gracious! What is this? Get out of here! Oh, no. Have you established healthy habits, right? And the healthy habits of moving every day, and like pay attention to food every day, eating vegetables every day, drinking water every day. That, you know, basically, you want to establish those habits before you think about cranking into something that you can work harder at. Basically what that slide's going over. Okay, let me go back to Zoom. Stop sharing. Okay. So there we go. Establishing maintenance and then knowing where to make adjustments is the key to making a change long-term or short-term. And when I say short-term, I mean, 6 to 12 weeks. Long-term meaning 6 to 12 years. I think that's pretty much about it, about the process of what fat loss is. Okay. Any questions about anything we've gone over so far? Good. Good.
Okay, yeah. So when you go to step 2, do you keep tracking everything?
That's up to you.
Like
Yeah.
your sleep and your water and
Yeah,
weighing?
the tracking everything is it's up to you and how confident you feel about maintaining it. So if you've been doing it for the last 3 months and you track it for 2 weeks, more than likely those things aren't going to just stop happening.
Right.
But the point of the first 2 weeks was just to make a note of where I am in my balance, because that balance is already happening. The only thing you want to start tracking after that is if, well, you want the weight. That's something you want to track. And then your big rock.
Right.
Yep. And if you get to that and it's been 4 to 6 weeks and you want to readjust your intake out, in and out, then you may go and track everything. Okay, so I picked up some healthy habits. I'm doing the one thing differently now than I was, or I found it easier to do this now. Okay, let me establish what my in and out is, and then I can make another adjustment.
Okay.
Yeah. I think this the biggest issue is most people who say, I want to lose weight, I'm going to start eating better. They're just doing it really blindly, and they're not really looking at something they can actually change for 2 weeks. They're like, well, I guess I'm just like stop eating out as much. Well, if your schedule and your life is forcing you to eat out all the time, that's not going to go away. It's not a reasonable change. It's not something you can maintain. Now, if you know there's no way around it, I'm eating out for lunch every single day. I always go to McDonald's and get a burger and fries every day. Well, you know the thing you can change is, well, I'm going to get a burger and no fries. But you wouldn't know that if you weren't being aware of what the actual maintenance is. Okay. And sometimes it's cutting something out, sometimes it's adding something in, and that's where just having a constant coach around you is important to help you with those conversations. And it's very fluid. It's happening all the time. There's no one solution that's just do this and this will work, because it's a very per person thing. Because when you establish those maintenance, I can talk to 100 people and their maintenance of intake output can all be completely different. So the thing they need to do would be 100 different things. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Solid. Has there been any questions on Facebook, Danielle? Do you see that on your phone? Or if anyone's listening on Facebook, do you have any questions? I don't see anything. Do you see anything? You're muted.
Sorry.
Anyone listening on Facebook, do you have any questions?
There's 3 people watching, but no questions.
Okay. All right. So,
I'll give it a second and see.
there we go. We'll give it a second. And I think that's about it. Hey, is the checklist on Canva up there towards the front from the Habits Challenge?
Hang on. Check. I think the checklist was a spreadsheet.
Did you build that off of yours?
No, I don't spreadsheet. That's not how I work. Let me see. Oh, wait. The checklist.
I think I have it.
Okay. I was about to say I made a different checklist, not spreadsheet.
Okay. So I'm going to share this screen. Let's get back to it. Share screen. Share. So screenshot that. And that's a really good, this is something to work towards with big rocks. So if you're trying to think about what big rocks can I work towards in my 2-week phases, picking one of these things or trying to get closer to it will be a good big rock to choose from. Okay.
Mhm.
Do you guys know how to screenshot this?
Oh,
My phone.
Or you can take a picture of it, either one.
yeah, you can. Here, let me see.
I mean, I can do it too, but I meant for themselves.
Can
I
you?
don't know if I could drop it in the.
I can, both did it. There we go.
Okay.
We can send that to you if you need it. Just ask.
Okay.
Okay, get back to me. There we go. Questions, comments, concerns? Feel a little bit better than before?
That's awesome.
Yeah? Janice, feel like you've learned
A
something?
lot. It's a lot.
It's
I'm doing some of it, but not all of it. And so that's, yeah.
Okay.
I think, I thought, yeah, I bet sleep's kind of some of it. Well, probably a lot more than I know,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and that may be a big rock. You may look at everything that's happening and be like, man, I am not getting close to a consistent 8 hours of sleep. Let me change that for 2 weeks. And how does that affect the scale? Does it affect it or does it not? Because if it doesn't, then you know that's something that maybe for your health is important, but when it comes to weight loss, fat loss, that's not a big rock for actually changing the scale. And then you go into another 2 weeks. All right, let me change this. How is that affecting me?
Right.
And then you may walk in, you may do something where you're like, you know what, man, I did 30 minutes of walking in for 7 days on top of my 3 days in the gym. And the numbers on the scale were off 2 pounds a week.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's do that for as long as you possibly can. And
Right.
you may get to your weight loss goals just by walking every day, but you wouldn't know it unless you tracked it for 2 weeks and align that with the average of the scale weights.
Right. Well, and then I don't think I like my scale, but maybe that's just because, it's not telling me what I want.
The scale is the easiest way to do it.
Okay. Do you have any recommendations on because maybe I thought I bought a new one and it quit working. And so I've got the old one and it just goes.
You know what, when it comes to a scale, honestly, just the one with the most ratings on Amazon, that's the cheapest one, will probably work and be the most consistent.
Okay.
And you don't have to use the scale. It's just easier to use the scale.
Right.
You can use tape measure. You can use inches. You can use the mirror. You can use pictures. They're just a little bit harder to look at when you're trying to really establish a maintenance. But you can ask yourself the same question with your 7, 8, 9, 10 of how can I change this, and just change that for 2 weeks at a time and make yourself a little journal of like, how did I feel after those 2 weeks?
Mhm.
Did I consistently do that thing for 2 weeks? Do I feel better? Do I feel like my clothes are fitting differently? Yes, no. And if they are, for those 2 weeks, then you don't really have to get on the scale. We use the scale as an example because it's the easiest one and it's the most dialed in. But you could use whatever parameter you want to use as long as it's consistent and constant.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Great. There we go. I will, this will save, it'll record, we'll put it up so that if you ever need to come back to it and listen to it, you can. Otherwise, thank you for being here.
Sure. Thank you.